We're moving to Pergamon. Pergamon in the 3rd century BCE is a pretty tiny place. There it is in bright purple, tiny little corner. Originally, Pergamon is no kingdom at all. It's a stronghold. And Philotirus, the guy whose image you see up here on a coin, is no king. He's an officer in the employ of one of the successors to Alexander, a guy by the name of Lysimachus, who I have not bothered to tell you about. And Lysimachus had taken control of this region up here. And he had, like all the officers of Alexander, a lot of money initially. I mean, everybody probably grabbed or had lots of money in the immediate aftermath of Alexander's death. Lysimachus entrusted his treasury, which, according to our sources, was 9,000 talents. Do not ask me what the equivalent of that is today. I have absolutely no idea. But let's just assume that it's a nice chunk of change. 9,000 talents. And Philotirus, who was a very loyal officer for Lysimachus, was entrusted with the guardianship of this treasury, and the place to which it was taken to be held, the sort of bank for the kingdom of Lysimachus, was the city of Pergamon, which you see here in a very nice modern view. There's a lovely little town called Bergama, modern Turkish for Pergamon, that sits at the base of the Acropolis of the ancient city. So that giant hill that you see in the background is the ancient site of Pergamon, and here is what it's like when you get closer. It was highly defensible. It was well watered, lots of springs, very fertile valley that it controls. Pretty good access to the sea, but not right on the sea, so could not suffer from a naval attack. So it was a tremendously strategic spot. And Philotirus stayed with the treasury very faithfully for, I don't know, 15 years or something like that. But then some in-house intrigues in the court of Lysimachus made him a little nervous, and in the year 282 he defected to the other big power broker in the east, and that was Seleucus I, the founder of the Seleucid dynasty that took over most of the Near East. And then, in the very next year, Seleucus defeated Lysimachus, and actually Lysimachus dies in battle in 281, and Philotirus is suddenly kind of in the employ of Seleucus, but the Seleucid Empire was so huge that Seleucus wasn't really paying very much attention to Philotirus, and Philotirus kind of started to rule as an independent agent. He, when he dies, a nephew probably of his takes over, a guy by the name of Eumenes. And under Philotirus and Eumenes, they begin to build up, to architecturally embellish the strategic and dramatic citadel of Pergamon. So you're looking here at the upper city, because way down below is all the rest of the housing and the markets and so forth. So up here at the top, this is the upper citadel. The treasury itself was probably stored in a building at the very top of the terrace, and in the natural slope of the city of Pergamon, you see a theater, a great theater, which is here on the plan. So when you look, I showed you that view initially because when you look at a plan of Pergamon, it looks flat. You know, it's two-dimensional. It's a black and white two-dimensional thing, and you don't get any sense of what a dramatic place it is, naturally, how amazing it is. But standing here, you're standing, I think I might have even put an arrow on here. Let's see. Yes, you're standing, there you are, at the edge of the long stoa that demarcates the bottom of the theater cavea, the seating area, and you can see how far below the rest of the town is. So all of this part of the city is down here. And the theater, which was built probably in the time of Philotirus, at the bottom of the, or at the demarcating the edge of the great natural slope of the city, is situated in such a way relative to the top of the Acropolis that it is very. Oh yeah, here it is. Here's the theater. This is a great site. Everybody should go visit Pergamon. It's a very nice place, and you should wear really comfortable shoes because you have to do a lot of walking. And it's very steep, as you can see, but extremely cool. All right, so here's the theater, and you can see little itty bitty people up here, so you can get a sense of scale and how dramatic it is. So this theater is situated on the slope of the Acropolis, just like the theater, the main theater of the city of Athens, was situated on the slope south of the Acropolis itself. Or actually, what direction are we standing in? North, south. That's east. So that's north. Yeah, south, right. So there's the Theater of Dionysus, and then of course what is at the top of the cavea of the Theater of Dionysus in Athens is the Parthenon sanctuary, main sanctuary of Athena, and likewise at Pergamon, at the just above where the theater was, Philotirus established a sanctuary to Athena there as well, with a Doric temple imitating the same style of the Doric order of the Parthenon. And let's see, what do I have next here? Oh yeah, so a monumental gateway, which you can see now if you go to a museum in former East Berlin, modern Berlin, big gateway, which is this in the plan, and you see that just as on the Acropolis, when you walk through the big gateway of the Propylaea, the Parthenon is off at an angle, not directly centered on the doorway of the Propylaea, but set off at an angle for more drama. So let's see if I manage to do this. No, I'm just going to go back for a minute. So to the way that Philotirus had the sanctuary of Athena designed is that when you came into the Propylaea through the propylon of the gateway of the sanctuary, you saw the temple at an angle as well. Philotirus, and especially his successor Eumenes, were great fans of the city of Athens and the traditions that made the city famous, especially the philosophical schools. And they established in the Sanctuary of Athena libraries, it's a library complex down here, and it was fronted by a long stoa in which philosophers could sit and philosophize, and there were philosophers who were patronized by the kings of Pergamon. That is, they were supported by them, and philosophical schools were established here. Okay. So here you are in the Sanctuary of Athena. It's extremely anticlimactic when you actually get all the way up to the top of the Acropolis of Pergamon today and see this. Here you're standing in the corner of two of the stoas, so the library is along here, and here's the platform of the Temple of Athena. So you can see it's sadly, essentially all gone. And what you've got is a very large open space. So the temple and the view, the whole prospect of it, were in the first couple of generations of the life of the Sanctuary of Athena at Pergamon, the main event. And the philosophical and educational activities that went on in the stoas. And here's a drawing of what it would have looked like, and you can see that it's pretty modest. We don't have any record of any additional decoration, architectural sculpture, metopes, pediments, anything of that sort. Philotirus is succeeded by Eumenes, who rules for about a little over 20 years, and just sort of holds down the fort. And he is succeeded by Attalus the First, another nephew, who has a very long rule of almost 50 years. All of the Attalids have pretty long rules, actually. It's a very, unlike every place else in the Hellenistic world, people don't knock each other off in Pergamon, so things stay pretty calm. In the time of Attalus, there were some major population movements afoot in the Mediterranean basin. Groups of tribally organized groups that we today call Celts, and in antiquity were called Gauls. That same Gaul that Caesar goes to and conquers, divides into three. Those Gauls in the 3rd century started to move out from their homeland in Europe, and in 279 invaded Macedonia and actually got as far as Delphi and were preparing to attack the sanctuary of Apollo at Delphi when a coalition of Greek city-states managed to defeat them and turn them back. And having been repulsed from the peninsular area of Greece, they sort of semi-retreated and then moved across the area of Thrace and across the Dardanelles and into the central upland area of Anatolia, which is an area that was later called Galatia, because Gauls from Europe moved there in the 3rd century BCE. The Gauls were organized, like I said, as tribes. There were sort of linked tribal units, and they were not a settled down people. They were not agriculturalists, and one of the ways that they kept things going was that they engaged in raids on settled towns for goods and livestock and money. And moving into this populated and essentially peaceful zone, I mean, notwithstanding these large-scale occasional wars between the Hellenistic kings, basically everything is just going along fine throughout all of Anatolia. There was lots and lots of prospect for the Gauls to, lots of villages for them to attack and pillage, and they quickly settled into a routine, we know this from ancient historians, where they would show up every year and demand a lot of money, and if you didn't pay them any money, then your village got sacked. So they pretty quickly figured out that Pergamon was a place with a lot of money, and as the luck of timing would have it, it was Attalus I who happened to be holding the rulership of Pergamon when the Gauls showed up at his doorstep. And he, instead of paying over some money, decided that that was really not a sustainable procedure, and he engaged them in battle. Initially, the first battle that he engaged them in the year 233 was just with one tribe, the Tolstoagii, and he defeated them. And in the very, just a couple of years later, in 229, the guy who happened to be in charge of the Seleucid Empire, which is off your map largely here, this area, teamed up with the Gauls against Attalus, probably so that the Seleucids could retake this zone that they had originally claimed after the death of Alexander. And Attalus defeated the coalition of the Seleucid king, Antiochus Hierax, and the Gauls in another large-scale battle. And then in the year 228, he defeated Antiochus alone in quick succession in 3 battles. And with that, suddenly Attalus I, rather than being king of one tiny little sort of principality in a little nook of Asia Minor, controlled most of what had been the zone of Seleucid Asia Minor, all the way to the region that we know of as Cilicia, which is right about there. So all of a sudden, the Pergamene kingdom was very, very large. And we know what people in this area do when they have won a big military victory. They make a military victory monument. And Attalus I went about adorning the sanctuary of Athena with a monument that would effectively convey the magnitude of his victory over the Gauls. And now what you get to do is have a little chat and think for a minute about what sort of mode will he deploy, what will he depict, how will he depict it, where will it go, what will the actual subject be. And what you want to be thinking about is 2 things. One, what does tradition suggest? And 2, what do the times encourage? So you might want to think about, what we've just talked about recently from Samothrace or Alexandria, and then think about Athens and come up with some ideas. All right, go.
So how do you? Well, maybe some kind of like it's like that. Maybe it's something like a so. I just know what makes sense. Yeah, yeah, I know that.
So what do you think he's going to do? And what's it going to be a statue of?
Specifically, but showing how, this tiny city, maybe taking all these massive, groups of people. I don't know what you would make to, symbolize that.
All right, let's see. First of all, what form should this victory be commemorated in? What form? What do you think?
I think because before they were kind of imitating the Athens Chronicles, they might do something similar.
So what might they do?
That year to battle, I think, programs with the enemies and the garb.
So depict a battle artistically, but bring it up to date by using a kind of mythical analog, but updating it with Seleucids as the bad guys. And what form would this be? It is boring in there, isn't it? Super boring. Yeah. So maybe they should put some architectural sculpture. So maybe the form should be sculpture on the temple that has tremendous tradition behind it, and there's then it would really jazz up the building. That'd be good. So, do you all agree with that, or are there other ideas?
We kind of talked about like the in thing right now, like the Nike. Was like make a statue, but not of God helping, but maybe a person, maybe even of
Attalus?
yeah, Atlas himself,
A statue of Attalus himself?
or somebody like related, not necessarily somebody who's helping out, somebody who was like victory was declaring that like you'd already won. Nike wasn't doing like battle, like helping out himself, and just declaring like, simple.
And would this be a freestanding statue? Or would this be statuary on the temple?
I'd say freestanding.
Okay, so now we've got two ideas on the table. We've got adorning, putting the depiction on the temple, or making it freestanding. And we also have essentially in the guise of a battle narrative, like the great myths and the kinds of stories that we see traditionally on buildings, or something that's more up to date, more personal, more individual, and more specific to Pergamon and the person who oversaw the victory, Attalus. Other ideas?
Yeah, I was agreeing with freestanding sculpture. I was thinking there might be the same thing, kind of be a slight reference to a deity, but mostly focused on the acts of the people of Pergamon. Their military. It would definitely be more of a specific battle instead of the mythological.
And so in your guys' idea, are we looking at some large scale thing, or so the Nike fountain, for example, is a single statue group. It's just the Nike on top of the boat in that setting. Are we thinking of one emblematic depiction, or something that is a little more large scale and broad?
I was thinking more small scale. I mean, it seems like that's kind of going with the trend of, instead of building an entire building towards this monument, just do a smaller, I mean, big enough to be noticed, but small enough to be. So I guess I want single piece.
So something that distills the idea into one moment. You like that too, huh?
I agree too. I think it'll be a little more small scale, more the depiction will be a little literal. I think it'll be very
Yeah, really simple. Hard to get confused about what that means.
I think that due to the topographic layout of the site, that they might have it in a more grand location. So maybe not necessarily a larger statue, but in a place that it can resonate that see it from everywhere, or have a viewpoint too.
Yeah, one of the things about this is that so you remember now from the plan. This is enclosed. I mean, you can look down from above, but you probably just see the edge of the terrace. You can't really. You might see you'd see the temple would block your view of anything that was inside here. There's stoas. There's a gateway over here, so you have to enter this sanctuary to see anything inside of it. And then if you put pedimental sculpture up, then you not only that, but you would walk around. Now, of course, that's exactly what happens on the Acropolis. So it's not as if there's not tremendous precedent for that. But there are advantages and disadvantages. Other ideas?
Well, we talked about, at least personally, I think it'd be a freestanding sculpture. It might have something to do with Athena just because they've been modeling everything. But like everyone else has said, I don't think it would be like a mythological picture of Athena, maybe just her commemorating Pergamon's victory, and not her actually taking it.
So now we have a whole slew of ideas. So first of all, let's vote: freestanding or on the building. Freestanding. Oh, almost everybody. On the building. It's good to stick with what you originally thought. Okay, so almost everybody says freestanding. I take it that you're thinking, well, I've been to Samothrace, and that Nike fountain, that's pretty impressive. I like that. And also, maybe you're thinking, this building not so well situated for putting statuary on it, and also statuary on the building, pedimental sculpture on the building is away. It's up. It's automatically distanced from you, and it's smaller by virtue of the fact that you have to fit it inside the triangular space of the pediment. So that's less dramatic. All right. So the council agrees. Freestanding. Fine. But there's a lot of there are a lot of ideas in play here about: should we have a god? Should we not? Should Attalus appear? How literal? How metaphorical? So let's have an argument for including a deity in the depiction. Who feels that wants to make an argument in favor of that? You're just voting?
I was just voting.
And why were you voting that way?
Because we know that they had such a connection to Athenians and Athens. They had, that was their model almost that they wanted. So they wouldn't go away from the Olympian gods.
So including the Olympian gods emphasizes the connection with Athens, as has been pointed out, emphasizes the protection of the Olympian gods, draws Pergamon into the larger historical cultural orbit of the Greek world. The Olympian gods have moved their purview all the way over to Pergamon, which I will point out to you is just down the road from Troy. It's in Turkey. Okay, now somebody who wants to argue for literal, not a metaphor, including Attalus or some specific, something that includes the king himself.
Well, with Alexander, he didn't have it was him and his mind.
Right.
He was apparently the son of a god, but
So we hear.
And even though they had that connection with Athens, it was built a long time.
Yeah, sometimes you just want to Move on. Want something fresh. All right, so yeah. I mean, all of the imagery that we see of Alexander, we don't see any deities. We don't even see fortune, Tiki, or victory, Niki. We just see it's real. It's him on a battlefield. It's him in a hunt. It's okay. He might have ram's horns on his head, but that's special to Alexander. But he's the real deal. Okay. Any other thoughts or any other suggestions for what should be here instead?
I've got a question. Can they build an entirely new building somewhere else?
They can. He could. So one lone voice in the council says, Attalus, can I just point out that this is a very circumscribed space and people would have to actually enter this space to see what's going on, and maybe you would want to put your monument elsewhere where it's more people would encounter it and on a daily basis, maybe even down in the lower city. And Attalus says, no, I'm going to build it in here. But thank you very much for that suggestion. Because Attalus was clearly a really nice guy, at least as far as we can tell from our literary sources. And the fact that nobody knocks him off for 40 years, that suggests that he is a pretty good guy. Or at least he didn't make any enemies. The theater was built for plays. Mm-hmm. Oh, that is very interesting. That is a very interesting point. So the theater, yes, is immediately below the sanctuary of Athena, and there's not direct access. I mean, you can't hop up over the terrace this way. You have to go around. The only way you can get into the sanctuary of Athena is through the propylon. You have to go through that gateway. But it's in the context of not only a dramatic setting, but a place where dramas were performed. That's a very nice point. All right, let's see. So, do we have two options on the table? We want. Oh yeah, we do. We have option with a deity, preferably Athena, and we have an option without a deity, something literal. But the literal rendering will include the king. And so far, those are the only two options. Everybody's happy to vote for one of those? There's no other ideas on the table? Felix?
Couldn't it still be very literal, but still show the deity?
Oh, in the way that the Niki of Samothrace is? So you kind of want it to. So you want some literal aspect. A little bit of A, a little bit of B. a literal aspect, and then Athena maybe kind of coming in, but in a more, as I think you were saying before, in a more real way, guys, not from on high, but down at the level. Okay, 3 options. Let's see. Athena, in her more majestic Athenian guise, somehow is incorporated into this monument, and perhaps it's just Athena herself. Oh, Peggy, nobody wants to vote with you. All right. More like Alexander, literal, Attalus is in the picture somehow. About a third of you. And something that has a deity in there, but in the more Niki of Samothrace like way of having a deity in there. So something kind of literal, but you get that, you get that cosmic approval, stamp of approval thing going on. Oh, so you guys are about evenly divided between those two. All right, so everybody who votes for freestanding sculpture, which is essentially all of you, you win. Yes, it is a freestanding sculpture. It's going to go right here in the middle. It's going to go in the sanctuary. It's going to go right here in the middle. And, you know, that's good because this is a big empty space. You got to think, why for 60 years did nobody fill this up? Well, I guess they didn't have a good reason. No big military victory. A big round base on which were a group of statues. We do not have the original statues, but we have multiple copies, later copies, Roman copies, and ancient references that allow us to, with some confidence, associate specific sculptures with this base inside the Sanctuary of Athena. For all of the details of the argument, you need to read Mr. Pollitt. Now I'm going to show you some of the sculptures. Here's the first one. This is a Gallic chief and his wife. Rather than being taken prisoner, he has killed her and is now, quite defiantly, committing suicide. He is sculpted in such a way that you need to move around to see every aspect. You see that his face looks 180 degrees opposite from hers. So in order to get the complete effect of what's going on here, you have to move all the way around the sculpture. Her limp body, wholly believably represented, and his raging defiance. He is in complete control of what he is doing, and he is in motion. His cloak is fluttering. He's on the move. His muscles are tensed. And the blankness of her face contrasts markedly with the intensity of his. These people have physical features that differentiate them from Greeks and identify them as Gauls. Specifically, they are bearded. He has sort of that, I don't know what you call it anymore. I have continued to call it the Miami Vice look, which I know makes me sound like a Neanderthal. and this long, shaggy hair. The Gauls were described by many ancient historians as a very specific type. And that is how they're depicted here. There's one of the sculptures from the probably to be associated with the round base in the Sanctuary of Athena. A young Gaul, wounded, blood gushing out of the wound on his leg, and turning, ready to hurl some weapon. Again, this intense, focused expression. Again, not quite possible to take in all aspects from only one direction. Here he is from behind. These are life-size, and they are pretty deliberately in your face. See the emotion on his brow, the grimace of his mouth. His teeth are clenched. And yet he's very young. And again, he has this wild, tousled hair. And another enemy, wounded, dying. like the others, you're encouraged to interact with them in order to absorb the message as you move around. Also, the wound on his body, visible. One of the, oh, wait, I'll show you a couple more shots of him. These sculptures were up on a base. They were not at eye level, so you would have been looking up at them somewhat. And you see that this is sometimes called the dying Gaul. He has also around his neck a toque, which is this kind of necklace that was a specific demarcation of Gallic affiliation. So you would look up and see his face. This particular copy of the Dying Gaul is in the Vatican, in one of the sculpture galleries, with just a whole bunch of other copies of Greek sculpture stuck inside the same room. So it's just crazy that there's these two standing in the window next to this guy. Anyway, you see the complete torsion of his body as he's fallen down. He's trying to still hold himself up. He's almost lost it. The Pergamene kings, in addition to being very interested in Athens and the sculpture and the architecture and the history, the philosophical schools of Athens, were also patrons of some of the sanctuaries in Old Greece. And one of the sanctuaries that the Pergamene kings helped with monetary donations and perhaps some sculptural assistance fixing up was the by now several hundred-year-old, getting down on its luck, Temple of Ephaea at Aegina. We know that the Pergamenes sent money and sculptors to help do some repairs on that. And it is likely that some aspects of the sculptural program at the Temple of Ephaea and Aegina impressed them sufficiently that they borrowed some of the ideas and poses and the emotional sense that was part of the program at Ephaea. So you're looking here, of course, at the figure of Laomedon from the east pediment of the Temple of Ephaea, and the Dying Gaul up here at the top. So, and here so, what do you think? About this? Would you like to have a little chat? Uh-huh. Crazy, huh? Surprising, right? I know, just when you think, okay, I know what's going to happen next. But it's cool, man. It's cool. I love this monument. What do you think? Weird, huh? All right, what do you guys think? No, Athena. What do you think?
We discussed kind of how it's like an overlap. Embarrassing.
Oh, so that it kind of, I was going to say demonizes them, but it doesn't exactly do that. Weakens them? You think so? Oh.
I think actually it makes the dolls look really incredible, and by having them, like their enemy, be so heroic, it makes them look really great for defeating.
So
Builds up the winners by showing, like, if you defeat someone that's really pathetic, what good is that?
if you defeat somebody who's pathetic, what good is that? If you defeat somebody who so many heroes of the past have been shown defeating so many times before, like centaurs or Amazons, well, that's a little same old, same old. What else?
I think it was interesting that they didn't put any of their own troops in there. Like it's I mean, in past ones you would see, in any kind of art, you would see like both sides, and you would see them defeating the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But this, you only see the defeated, you don't see the victorious. So it's almost like, I mean, history is written by those who won, and it's kind of like showing that, like, you're not forgetting it. They were an important part of their history. That shows, like, death, culture, feel, show you.
Yeah, there's a very, there's a very high regard for these enemy combatants. They are portrayed as strong and able, almost ferocious, down to the end. And the chief with his wife, this is an enemy the likes of which we have not seen depicted in any artistic milieu up till now.
Well, I must say, you would certainly empathize with your enemy and actually kind of erase the line between we and them. This says to me, we are them also.
That you feel their humanity, that you feel their individuality, that you feel their feelings, their emotions, what happens to them. You see all stages here. It's the end part of the battle, but there's somebody who is already dead, somebody who is completely strong and going to take his own life, not that he's been wounded, somebody who is on the edge of losing his life, somebody who has been wounded but is still able to fight.
I think it also, like, sort of
The scale really matters. The scale makes a huge statement. That's a nice way to put it. That they're life-size. They're not more than human. They're not less than human. They are.
I think this really, looking at the Egypt on San Frieze, it's the next logical step from that, because it's still a simple statement of victory when it comes down to it. You're showing a defeated enemy. You don't have to put your own people there because you're showing the aftermath of what they bring, but you're doing it in a visceral human way, and you're also doing it with an enemy that you can afford to glorify, because you don't want to put other Greeks in there, other Greeks who could come back in a generation or so and do this. The Gauls are still there. They're still in Galatia, but they're under your power, and they're not a threat. So you can afford to glorify.
Glorifying the Gauls, turning them into an other, makes them equivalent to or different than the way the Athenians depicted the Persians on the Parthenon. Discuss. So what are we to think of the image of the Persians filtered through the lens of their depiction on the Parthenon? The Persians are fill in the blank. First of all, who are the Persians on the Parthenon? Do we see Persians? They're represented by somebody else. Who are they represented by? Trojans. Who else? Amazons. Who else? Centaurs. Who else? What's the last one? You said giants. Right. So first of all, they are dehumanized. We don't see them. Whether because it would have been fearful to do that, or because it would have been elevating them to do that, we don't, at the moment know. What we can know is after the fact, anybody who goes to look at the Parthenon and knows that the Parthenon is erected in the aftermath of the great victory over the Persians, reads these mythological enemies as Persians. And so imagines the Persians as not worthy of being depicted on their own. And the outcome of those battles as inevitable. That is the hidden little advantage when you depict something using a mythical story. We know how it's going to end out. The Amazons are never going to win. Giants are not going to win. That's for sure. So nothing is in a sense, at stake. The end of the story is known. So, what are the fundamental differences here? There aren't any Greeks that are winning. There are recognizable people who are losing. I think that that's important. What I'm asking is, so when you walk in, so say that you're a visitor from Athens, and you walk into the sanctuary of Athena here, and this is what you see. What do you think about the victories of Attalus? You reflect on the victories, the historic victories that you're so proud of from your own Athenian ancestors. And then you walk in and you see this. What do you think about the Attalid claim to be the new Athens? You're in the sanctuary of Athena. It's sitting on top of this great kind of acropolis. The theater is right below. Same deity, same style. Temple, basic setup of the top of the terrace with the temple off at an angle and a nice gateway, theater down below. Great military victory over an Eastern barbaric entity. Do you think from this, these people deserve to take on the mantle of the successors of the Athenians, or do you think, nice try, Atlas? That's the question.
I think that they're kind of saying, like, we have a very similar scope, that mythological one. And, like, by not taking on the past, not only did we have a battle scope, but we had it in real time and feel like we know what happened. So, I mean, in some ways, this kind of outdoes, like we actually, like, the living people, did something that's on equal level as something.
Isn't that a fantastically interesting shift? Real life beats myth. Well, what is the point of myth, for Pete's sake? Isn't it supposed to be better? Legends, heroes, and the whole real people, real time, a real enemy worth fighting, an outcome that's not inevitable. Think about some of those quotes about fortune, about chance, about how the wheel turns and turns again. In the busy conflicts that occupied the minds of the people, the kings and their cohorts in the Eastern Mediterranean in the Hellenistic period in the 3rd and 2nd centuries, the successor to that Seleucus whom Attalus had defeated is Antiochus III, and we heard already about him teaming up with Hannibal, and then Hannibal getting knocked off by Rhodes in a battle here in 190, and that's what led to the Nike of Samothrace. So, which I point out to you actually probably postdates the Attalid dedications, just if you're keeping fine track of this. Now just to go back, so we've now seen already a Pergamene dedication that's up on the Acropolis of Pergamon at the time of this battle and this set of events. And the result was that Pergamon was able to expand its reach. And when Pergamon expanded this far, it came into, therefore, direct conflict with a couple other of these small kingdoms in the Hellenistic East, the kingdom of Bithynia and also the kingdom of Pontus, which is actually underneath Antiochus's chin. And the kings of Bithynia and Pontus in succession made attacks against the successor to Attalus I, who was Eumenes II, who ruled from 197 to 143 or something like that. And Hannibal, still running around looking for somebody to pay him to continue to make trouble, hooks up with, I mean, really, you got to feel sorry for Hannibal. You know, clearly a brilliant general who just kept picking the wrong side time after time. What a drag. So, and then, you know, that whole, all the victories write the histories, and he just comes across as this deluded maniac, you know, in all of the sources, and really he was, well, whatever. Anyway, Hannibal hooks up with the king of Bithynia, and they fight against Eumenes, and Eumenes wins, and then Hannibal actually commits suicide, so he can't make any more trouble. And then Eumenes wins another battle against the king of Pontus, and Bithynia, and decides to make another victory monument. So we're looking at a model of the Acropolis Pergamon. Here's the Sanctuary of Athena. There's the temple, the, as you point out accurately, modest temple. You can see how you wouldn't, so that victory monument of Attalus I that we've just been discussing in detail, you wouldn't be able to see that. It's inside here, as was spoken about. So your idea about perhaps building that monument someplace else, you know, maybe after the fact Attalus is thinking, you know, I should have listened to that guy. You know, it's just stuck inside here. Nobody can see it. Anyway, one terrace below the Sanctuary of Athena, so it's Sanctuary of Athena, one terrace below, there's another great big terrace right here. And here it is today, that terrace, and on that terrace was the victory monument that Eumenes built to commemorate his victory over Pontus and Bithynia. We don't, you know, it's just so funny sometimes about history and archaeology. Like historians, if you would take a class in Hellenistic history, I guarantee you, I would put money down that you would not hear about the battles between Eumenes and Bithynia and Pontus. Like, who cares? Now, you know, these guys they're not Rome, not one of the Seleucid kings, you know, they're not really one of the big players. You would not hear about it at all. In art and archaeology, however, this is big stuff because the monument, the victory monument that Eumenes II constructs in honor of those victories is one of the most famous of the extant Hellenistic monuments, excavated by the Germans at the turn of the century. So if you go to Pergamon today, you see this pitiful base and an oak tree. But if you go to the Pergamon Museum in Berlin, you see what stood there, because this is what stood there, and this is what it's like when you go to the Pergamon Museum in Berlin today. It's just amazing. You have to read all about it in Mr. Pollitt. It is not a temple and not a sanctuary. It is an altar on which sacrifices would be offered to Athena and Zeus and victory. Where's the altar, I bet you want to know? Where is that altar? Woo! Fast, fast, fast. The altar is up here. It's inside. So all of this is a huge enclosure for the altar. A huge enclosure. And there is a colonnade that goes all the way around the enclosure. So you can see, here's the altar. There's a colonnade that goes all the way around, great big steps, and the sculpture, because you gotta have sculpture to tell the story of the victory, the sculpture goes around below the colonnade. And it is amazing. Just amazing. Life size. Right there at your level. And in fact, doing some of the same things you're doing, like walking up the steps. And the story, well, maybe the visceral reality of the Victory Monument that Attalus built started to make some people nervous, or maybe it didn't seem glorious enough after the fact. But the subject to show the victory of Eumenes II over Bithynia and Pontus is a Gigantomachy. The gods versus the giants. And because the altar is so huge, you need a lot of gods. We don't just have 12 Olympian deities. We've got every minor deity in the arsenal. We have Nyx, the goddess of the night. We have Moira, the goddess of the fates. We have Hecate. We've got them all. We've got ones that you've never even heard of. They were so scraping the bottom of the barrel and trying to figure out how, where they could get some more gods from, that they have to label them. There's labels on the altar. Oceanus, that's one of the deities. I mean, really, gods that are like, wow, I finally get to get out and have a good time, because really, you never see these people. And you can recognize the giants, because the giants have snaky legs, and which makes it hard for them to crawl up the steps. There are a lot of quotes, like direct quotes, on the altar. So here, for example, let's see, there's Artemis, one of the actual main gals. Here's Apollo, her bro. There's Apollo defeating a giant. Does this Apollo remind you of anybody? Parthenon, South 27? Mr. Showman Lapith? Obviously just the complete model for Apollo on the Great Altar. And there's a lot of this sort of thing. If you want to go through all of the 100-some-odd sculptures on the Great Altar, which you may be happy to learn we will not be doing, there are many, many, many direct quotes. Athena, being crowned by victory. So just like some of you were saying, this is what Attalus should do. Whoever was in the room taking notes kept those notes, and then when it was time for Eumenes to make a victory monument, they said, there were some good ideas that were brought up the last time we had to do something like this. And so here's Athena. She's effortlessly dispatching a whole bunch of giants, and victory is already, wings fluttering, coming to crown her. And Zeus, who is actually in the same guise as Poseidon on the west pediment of the Parthenon, with that, leaping away in awe at the olive tree that Athena has made to appear. That's the scene on the west pediment. So here's Zeus. Athena's like this, just down the way. If you're wondering where the labels were, look. This is an actual piece from the altar. See? They were so, to help them out. So here are two nice views of the Great Altar. And if you go today in the museum, all the sculptures that went around the back end are now around here on the side, and you can, as you would have been able to in antiquity, walk all the way up the stairs or walk all the way around the bottom. What we will start with next time is this comparison, because this was clearly in the minds of the Pergamon artists and sculptors when they constructed the Great Altar. Have a good weekend.